roads, transportation. We have education, where we have 4 school districts, 2 of which spend some time in Washington trying to get something for education. We have health and human services, which pretty much leave to their own devices over there at Catholics and mental health and the hospital. We have law and justice and public safety, which is doing quite well through Ferguson, and wants to continue to do that. And then we have economic development, which we talk a lot about but don't get much done. We have a number of things that have happened in this county where we've actually had independent folks go out and get enormous amounts of money on their own. I've been working with the CHIPS project now for 5 years. We've gotten money from the following sources: National Forest Foundation, USDA, Sierra Nevada Conservancy, CDBG, and Job Development, Indian Manpower, and Workforce Investment dollars. So when you put together, the way you get the money from that kind of thing is that you put together enough unity and coalition. So there's 42 different organizations and agencies that have come together to form the Calaveras-Amador Consensus. It's now 2 counties, and it involves a number of issues which are being funded. One is energy. The cogen plant has received $2.4 million on that. Fire safe work, which we've managed to pull down several $100,000. Air pollution issues, where if we stop burning the slash, we gain advantage there. Watershed management and stewardship. Economic development and conversion. Workforce training. Native American site restoration. And it has bipartisan support from Lundgren and Feinstein, who have both co-sponsored these things over the last several years. Lundgren just recently did the full tour and was quoted in our paper as saying that he doesn't like earmarks, but this is real work on the ground. Anytime you get that kind of unity with multi-agencies working together, you've got a better shot at getting funded, and especially when it is around the things that they just happen to be funding in Washington. We're not that good at pulling ourselves together, and we're trying to solve this problem within this context with a budget that says we don't have a cent for it. On the other hand, there's parallel discussions going on with CCWD, which ponies up some toward this, 2 school districts, which are putting money out but not getting much back for it, our own situation, ourselves, which have a number of different possibilities for funding, and the hospital, which is looking toward the healthcare stuff and trying to figure out whether we can put together a local Central Sierra Health Exchange. All of these things require long-term thinking and interagency collaboration, and we need to jointly fund our presence in Washington so we are not tripping over one another as we go in and give not one but several water presentations, not one but several school presentations, all from this tiny little county. It appears that law enforcement is the only group that's actually got a unified and focused strategy and has that area covered. What about these other things, and does it matter to the board? In my view, the whole county ought to put together one priority in each of these 5 areas every year. We ought to sally forth with good knowledge of what funding is available and target ourselves, dress up for the party so that we can at least get the possibility of an invitation. Now, what to do this year? I figure that the interagency meetings and the possibility that First 5 is going to convert some of its energy to grant and intergovernment relations for the KID part of the Health and Human Services. Yeah. But there are partners that we should join with next year and either get one or more groups that are well-connected and can work both sides of the aisle in Washington and Sacramento and get on with business. This year, it looks like we've missed half the stuff. Well, some of the stuff. I'm talking for this year's, what didn't happen last year. What didn't happen last year, we're out of the game when many jurisdictions that got better organized are receiving enormous amounts of money to the north and south of us. So it seems to me we ought to do the best we can this year on a couple of projects. I would very much ask that, since the Calaveras-Amador Consensus is being used as the model for the entire Sierra Nevada initiative, And since that's very low-hanging fruit and already well-organized, that we see whether somebody might help set up meetings for us. We're going ourselves. We set up our own meetings, but it'd be nice to have a little bit of guidance in D.C. I'd also suggest that either we fish or cut bait on Cosgrove. We have to stop playing with it. We either get our planning money and figure out our options, and then have a real project that we're asking for funding. Can't keep on asking for planning, but we have to complete the plan in order to get to that stage. Either we're going to do that, or we're going to just admit we have a catastrophe and we'll just wait for it to happen.
I don't think that's...
And I'm for, by the way, I'm for doing the cost. I just think we owe it to the people. We helped set up this situation, and we ought to do something about it. It ought to be a priority because so much public safety is at stake on it. So my position is that we try to do something if there's any viable possibility. So that leaves Ferguson working with our law enforcement, and questions about the other 4 areas and whether we want to try to accomplish anything in those realms. I'm open to anybody's suggestions, but I really think the economic conversion and the combination of things in our forest gives a lot of potential for jobs and long-term economy, and we should try to capitalize on the work that's happened so far.
Russ, do you have any comments?
Well, I want to reemphasize what I said a moment ago about Cosgrove Creek. I think we have a commitment to keep after that and make whatever investment in that we can. Because the hair is standing up on the back of my neck that we're going to be asked to pay some money here pretty soon, and we're not going to have it. The O'Byrne's Ferry, the bridge over O'Byrne's Ferry is a very important one for me, and I think that we really haven't, unless, Tom, you can tell me that you've been over talking to Peter Rye about their participation, that they've pledged $3.5 million to the project. Was that in the grant application?
We have letters of support from Tuolumne County, from Caltrans, from, I believe, there were a couple of other jurisdictions. I've also spoken to Peter about the current commitment and possible future commitments if it becomes a viable project, and he understands that if the project is viable and we do get funding, that we'll be back to Tuolumne County to pay their fair share. So it doesn't stop at the $3 million. That's seed money for them.
Okay.
That's our stance.
We haven't mentioned, except in passing, the New Maloney's recreation access. Tom and I went to Folsom, and we still have to talk about getting something scheduled, whether we keep our oars in the water on that particular project. But I'm pretty much convinced in my mind that the local resistance that we're encountering isn't going to go away. And I'm pretty sure that either Ferguson Group or Carmen Group, with their connections in Washington, D.C., could go a little higher up the ladder to the Department of Interior, which gives the Bureau of Reclamation their marching orders. And maybe that's a stretch too far, but we're not really getting the kinds of responses from the Bureau of Reclamation that I would expect, or what I would hope for. They've got a bias against spending the kind of money that I think that they should be spending, and they just flat don't want to do it. So that would be another reason why I would think it would be justified to have representation in Washington for that particular project. And I'm just not at all sure that trying to make a decision right here today is possible or even advisable. I think that we might have a little bit, well, obviously we can't do any can't commit any funds unless we do it out of contingencies, and I don't think we've got enough votes to do that and before we really get into the budget discussions. And frankly, I'm kind of anxious to hear the report from Steve and Gary when they come back from Washington to see what their fresh ideas are immediately upon returning about whether this is an effort that is worthwhile or just how much enthusiasm that they have for the lobbying effort and making those trips when they get back. I felt like it was really quite worthwhile, the trip that I took in October. The one that destroyed all my travel funds.
On cab ride?
Red-eye specials.
I can't even go to CSAC for crying out loud.
I know, I'm not either. I guess I have a question for Under Sheriff Walker. He's not a captain anymore.
Can we use your nugget?
Michael, since we'll have 2 members of the sheriff's office, one, thank you, and one former member of the sheriff's office, in Washington next week, would it be beneficial to have one of the county supervisors just with them when they go on with, I think...
To their meetings?
Yes.
It could be. We used to do that 5 years ago when we first started with the Ferguson Group. A supervisor would attend with the county representatives. Yet, it's incumbent on the supervisors to understand, though, too, that when you're back there meeting, you're generally meeting with staff. So you're not meeting one-on-one generally with the elected representatives back there. So it's depending on what your expectations are.
We want to meet with whoever's going to get the work done.
That's the staff.
I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could give Gary or Steve what the schedule is, and if one of them can, and they could accompany Captain Macedo and Clay, that...
Yeah, we could get a copy of the schedule to you, and at the earliest opportunity that you could let us know whether or not you'll be able to attend or not, though, then we could add you to the list, because you make those appointments with the staff back there, and you tell them who's going to be attending.
With the full list.
Can you...
Yeah, send it to, if you got it, send it to my email.
Okay?
And I don't know what days they're going to be back there. Are they back there on Wednesday and Thursday?
11th.
We'll be there Wednesday and Thursday of next week, so.
We have meetings scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay, well, Tuesday we'll be traveling, so we won't be there, but we will be available on Wednesday. And I do have a schedule from CCWD for Wednesday, but I'm not sure I want to attend all the things they have scheduled there. So depending on what the times are for your schedule, there's a possibility that we could hook up and...
We're actually going with Washoe County as well as part of for the Tahoe Regional Interoperable Project. So most of the Nevada meetings are on Wednesday. Actually, all of the Nevada-based meetings are on Wednesday, because that's when Sheriff Haley will be in Washington. Most of the California meetings are on Tuesday. But we have a much larger California delegation to hit, so we have 8 meetings to their 3. So there will be California meetings on both sides, but the entire delegation is going to go in.
Okay,
So.
well, send me the schedule and
Sure.
we'll see if something works to where we can...
We can do that.
One thing I'd like to say, too, is kind of along the lines of what Steve was talking about in terms of partnerships. I think that's why we're very effective also, is because we have entered into a partnership with Alpine County, and now we're in this whole Tahoe Basin interoperability communication program. So those partnerships are important when you're building relationships back in Washington.
So you want to be one of our partners?
I thought we were.
Last month, there was a high-ranking fellow from the Alpine Sheriff's Department that came to our Central Sierra Economic Development Agency meeting and gave I thought it was a brilliant report on the expansion of the upcountry communications network. And he was telling us a story where your proposal has recently gotten kind of a leg up from where you would have been, because there's a larger application that is really kind of rooting for your application to get funded. Is that making any sense?
Correct. That'd be the Tahoe Basin project.
The Tahoe Basin.
It'll actually, when it's built out, will encompass all of Northern California.
But
it started with our project.
I thought that was really interesting, that this Tahoe Basin thing is really throwing a lot of support to your application, trying to get it done so that they eventually will get their money. And the way it was represented is they'll get it a lot faster if you get yours earlier.
Right.
So that was pretty
So it's worked out very well for us. It'll be Northern California and then Western Nevada.
Well, I'll just, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm going to just kind of give my opinions. I don't think we've made a decision if we want to use a firm or what we want to use a firm for. But for me, the topic of, I'd like us to use a firm or two firms. Maybe for the water issue, we use the Carmen Group for transportation. We might use the Ferguson Group. Mr. Garcia has had success with them. We've had success with them. That aside, I'm not willing to commit to anything to ruin the budget process. We have to set priorities, and as much as we might like, and we've had a good return on investment with the Ferguson, and I can't trust Carmen, assuming CCWD's had a return on investment of their finances. Until we start going through the budget and establish priorities, I don't support making any decision at this time on whether to do, or not to do, because unless Mr. Garcia can come up with some non-general fund money, I'm not willing to vote any general fund money for that. And I think we need to work on Mountain Ranch road improvements and O'Burns Ferry Road. And it might mean different strategies for those two. It could be we can do Mountain Ranch Road ourselves, and maybe we need to have some help on O'Burns Ferry due to the size, based on what I heard Mr. Garcia saying. But to hire a firm to help us with $200,000, I'm going to get Gary some knee pads. So that's my comments. I don't know if
that was a referral to earlier announcements. If you weren't in the previous session, you would have missed the meeting of that.
Oh, sorry.
Just trying to help here.
Thank you. Okay, so those are my thoughts. I don't know if any of the other board members want to make a commitment now or comment on.
I think we're in a study session, so I don't think it's an action.
No, but you can voice your direction.
We can voice our direction, and I think if we can get some help on the Mountain Ranch Road improvements, it may be well worth going that route. I don't know, I don't have any hardcore figures in front of me telling me the amounts that it would cost us, so I don't know what that costs, but I do know that that's in conjunction with our jail project, and I would think that would put us on a pretty good status to get some funding for that. And if we need the help, to rely on staff to solely try and go out and find the money for it, or even go out to the application process ourselves, we're not putting ourselves in the best possible position doing it that way, that we could be to get some funds for it. The Burns Ferry Road Bridge replacement, that's a very, very large, by our standards, project. I don't, again, know what it would cost us to pay a firm. I don't see any figures in front of us, but I would like to see some types of figures for just possibly those two projects for this year. If we are within a window, let's at least look at what it would cost us before we make the decision to say yes or no. So that's where I'm at.
Any other comments?
I'm sort of with Gary. There are a couple projects I think that make a lot of sense. One would be the Mountain Ranch project, given the infrastructure that we have coming into government. Center. I think I voted against the Cosgrove Creek project in the past, but I think the board has made such a commitment now. I don't see how you kind of walk away from it. When this first happened, I was for forming a benefit basin amongst those that were impacted and let them pay the cost of fixing their problems, since they're the ones that live there. They built in the floodplain. But I'm with Maria also. I'm really leery about making commitments prior to preliminary budget. I mean, I'd like to know where we are and what the consequences of commitments are. In the interim, I'm with Gary. I think Tom just needs to look, and I mean, you've done a very good job in your department of obtaining grants, and you need to look and see what's out there on your own, independent of a lobbyist. And if they're there, why, do the best you can to apply and be awarded a grant. But as far as paying a lobbyist, I think there's only a couple things I'd really be willing to pay a lobbyist for. Number one would be the Mountain Ranch Road projects, because it would have such an impact on our infrastructure requirements that are going on at Government Center. That would I guess I would just say that would be my top priority. I mean, if there was some way of getting money for that, that would be my top priority.
Okay.
Free up some of that bond money.
Steve?
I think that even as times get increasingly tough budget-wise, that there are times where cuts actually cost money. There are clearly dollars available for various concerns that fit our real needs. Getting a return of tax dollars takes organization that we lack and contacts that we have no clue to.
Yeah.
And the problem with our approach is both that it is disorganized, not prioritized, not well strategized, and it doesn't have the partners necessary to even get the grants. If we structure this year, going into this budget, let's figure out what our part of a multi-jurisdictional approach to represent Calaveras County in 5 areas, or whatever areas you think are appropriate. If we can pull that off, it will stop us each from having these fruitless discussions, each within our own jurisdiction. The school districts feel the same way. The water district is saying they won't carry us anymore because they don't have the funds, they can just carry themselves. Instead of devolution at the time of greatest need, we actually need to consolidate effort, deploy it effectively to a few priorities each year, and work with our agencies to bring home what's really rightfully ours. I do think we need to approach it in our budget, but my position would be that you need to spend a little bit of money to be able to access the tax dollars that are ours to bring home. California does a pretty poor job compared to a lot of other states. We're net contributors to other states. And I would have to say that Calaveras County, if we got well organized, given our needs and given the specific projects that I think have great federal appeal, could be doing a lot better than we are, but we need help. So I would like to see us hire a group next year. I'd like to see us do it in conjunction with other agencies, and that we have this priority discussion very early in the year so that we can really target it out effectively.
Steve, on that consolidation of effort, you alluded a couple of weeks ago that you were headed over to a meeting. How did that turn out?
All 5 agencies agreed that we should have a follow-up meeting in 8 areas, and those are being scheduled. One of them is the idea of procuring having a joint presence in Sacramento and Washington, and joint sharing of the contract for a group to help represent, or group or groups to help represent those interests. So there was a lot of, I would say, a lot of cachet on that discussion.
Yeah.
How does that work physically, I mean, or fiscally? Do you all contribute into a fund, and one check is written to the consultant, or is it everybody?
We haven't got operational discussion yet. What we're trying to do is get the concept straight, whether we have enough mutual interest and whether the partnerships would be productive. And so what's happening right now is that each agency is going back and to analyze the productivity of their effort over the last number of years, and the next joint meeting for that issue will have each one describing what their needs and priorities would be if they're capable of doing that, and also what they're currently spending and what they feel their return is and what could be improved. That's the next talk.
Okay, are there any, I'm sorry, are there any comments from the public or staff on this? Okay, Jeannie?
So I'm going to add this discussion to our preliminary budget discussion for priority setting.
That's fine.
And then we can certainly explore what it would take to have someone work on our behalf for Mountain Ranch Road. Did I count 3 interested folks on that?
You got a 4th, I think, in that.
All right. For now, we'll start there.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, this meeting's adjourned, and next week there'll only be 3 supervisors.
Going into closed session?
Yes, we're going into closed session.
We should be able to finally get